Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we're going to discuss the action-adventure thriller film, 2008 thriller film, Eagle Eye. So this is our Shia LaBeouf. So many people are in this that I completely forgot. We have a 10-year-old Cameron Boyce in this, and it's so surreal watching him as a young kid actor, and then watching his, career progress. This was 2008. He did Grown Ups in 2010, and then many projects after that. Did the Descendants franchise, and then he passed away at 22, something like that, from a seizure. It's still so wild how bright his future was because of how incredibly talented he was. And it's very hard now watching projects that he's in, knowing the outcome. And I don't know how, and it's funny because we just watched a Sophia Carson film couple reviews ago, and I said we have to do the Descendants reviews at some point. But Cameron is in those. He's in the 4 films. And I had a hard time watching him in these scenes as a 10-year-old kid, just with a big smile on his face. And I'm it's gonna be very difficult to watch the Descendants films whenever I do that. I don't get it. I never met him. I don't understand why his passing affected me so much when it happened, and then it's all these years later still. And he was just such an incredibly talented philanthropic human being who just understood, and there's no one else like him. I don't know how else to explain it. But anyway, aside from how incredible Cameron is and playing a role within this, Rosario Dawson's in this, completely forgot. Billy Bob Thornton, Anthony Mackie, so many other people are in this, and I just don't remember it. I remember seeing this in theaters way back in the day, and I remember being like, oh, this is a great thriller film because Steven Spielberg produced this. And he didn't direct it, he produced it. And I just thought it was very interesting of a concept, right? Like, what happens if the government creates a giant robot computer who decides, based on the Declaration of Independence of We the People, that if a government body is destructing itself, then it has to go, or whatever the words are. And then the computer decides that's what's going to happen. That's the premise of this film. The computer, Aria, is an AI, artificial intelligence, and she's doing her programming. So she's now manipulating Shia LaBeouf's character of Jerry to do stuff to help gain, for Project Guillotine, to wipe out the top part of the country's leadership, to start anew, as well as this random woman, Rachel. And then it's a matter of why is Rachel a part of it? Why is Cameron's character, her son, a part of this? Well, one character has to put a chip in the trumpet as it's being delivered to DC from Chicago because of a school trip, and she's going to be wearing this crystal that can explode when you hit a certain frequency and create a football field sized explosion. Oh, Ethan Embry is in this. Completely, we did an Ethan Embry marathon many a times, and this popped up, but I don't remember. Oh, I don't own this. That's why. So I was waiting for it to be on streaming, and here we are in streaming. So, watching of Eagle Eye. Love Ethan Embry. And Billy Bob did a great job within this as well. This was so well done. All these years later, this came out in 2009, and to see this as a 2009 film, this came out in 2008, and the timestamps on the video cameras was January 25th, 2009, January 26th, 2009. So it came out in 2008, which means it was filmed in like 2007, and it takes place in 2009. So this is very much late aughts, right? I was 17, 18, 19, 07, 08, 09. And so it's interesting watching this from a technology standpoint. I love the mall scene. Forgot about the mall scene. Love the mall scene. They a whole 2 scenes worth is in Circuit City, in the mall. Circuit City doesn't exist anymore. So it was a very nostalgic thing. I don't know why. I can't tell you. I don't have an explanation. But I watch like dead mall videos, abandoned mall videos, like before bed each night. Could not tell you why. I don't understand it. I don't understand what it is about the mall decay of the liminal space, the gigantic space that once housed so much life and social aspects to it. The gorgeous neon that may or may not still work. It's just, time capsule stuff. I don't know why. It puts me to sleep, but it's strange. I can't explain it. I'm sure there's a reason, but I can't explain it. So having a mall scene, I love any project that has a mall scene in it. I worked in malls. I'm a big fan of malls. Um, May they rest in peace, those who are gone. But it was interesting watching this and having the Circuit City scene, because Circuit City doesn't exist anymore. So that was cool. Um, Watching this though now in 2024, 15 years later, 15 years later, it's wild to say that, because there was not an iPhone in sight when this was filmed in '07. Technically, didn't the iPhone come out in '08? I think that's how the Trainthon was, or I don't know. I don't know when the iPhone first came out, but it wasn't as popular as it is now, obviously. But 15 years later, and this is a scary film, and it's scary because we have the whole AI problem with in regards to art now. But what if, and who's to say this isn't actually even happening? Because we have all of these drones all over the place now, right? And there wasn't that many drones in this film. There was a military drone, but there was no civilian drones in 2009, commercially widespread. Now we have that. So it's interesting watching this 15 years later, comparing the technology we have now to back in '08, '09 when the film takes place and it actually came out. Because what if this kind of stuff is actually happening? What if the government of the United States of America has this main central AI unit? It's possible. I don't know if it's probable, but it's possible. And they are abiding by the codes of the original Declaration of Independence. How would that be interpreted? Would it be abided? And would such a guillotine protocol actually be into fruition? How would this affect this particular time period? It's scary because we see how destructive AI can be in regards to what just happened with the Writers Guild of America, the WGA. They were on strike for quite some time. The SAG-AFTRA union was on strike for quite some time in regards to acting, in regards to writing, because of AI stuff. What happens when AI hits the political front? We've seen it hit social media. We've seen it hit the art community. We've seen it hit, art community in regards to physical media, digital media, but then also in the acting and writing sense as well, and the music sense. What happens then when AI is no longer within regards to the arts, within regards to writing, chat GPT, any of that kind of stuff, reviews, any of that stuff, summarizing articles? What happens when it hits the military front on a cognitive level? What happens when it hits the political front on a cognitive level? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting, because that's where it's progressing to. And it's a matter of we're the cause of our own extinction. It's a fascinating thing to discuss, because it's not even Goliath theory in regards to global warming. That's a whole different animal altogether. This is a means of the monster is attacking the creator. So we, the humans, created this entity, an AI unit, who can destroy. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I don't know if it'll happen in my own personal lifetime, but it's interesting watching this play out in real time, because things are starting to escalate, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it within regards to the arts aspect. But now what happens next? Because we're conscious to that part. But what about the other stuff? I'm curious what happens with the other stuff. Are there protocols in play to not let that happen? I hope, but who knows? So it's interesting watching a film from 15 years ago. This is the roundabout that I'm trying to get to. The train of thought went whoosh, and we're coming back to station. Okay. When you watch something when it comes out, it's a great thing to watch at the moment. When you watch something many years later, here we are 1.5 decades later, 15 years later, right? 16 technically, but I'm going by 15 just based on the fact that the film takes place in 2009, so 2009 plus 15 years, that would be 2024. But technically, if it came out in '08, it would be 16 years, technically, since we're in 24, but whatever. You say 15, 16, however many years you want. Decade and a half. We're rounding about. Decade and a half, right? When you watch something a decade and a half later, it can have a different meaning because of different stuff that's gone on since then within the past 15 years. So I find it interesting watching film in general, reading books, watching a show, a TV show, watching a theater show. I find it interesting watching something at one particular point in life. Things happen, years pass, you watch it again, and it can mean something completely different to you. You learn something different. It's interesting. It's very interesting how art works in any form of media. Very interesting how art works, because certain stories can be interpreted one way at a present moment in a particular mindset, and then understood in a completely different light at a later point in life. It's interesting how the mind works. It's interesting when you have the drive to learn and understand that without progress, there would be no, excuse me, that without learning, there would be no progress. Without listening, there would be no progress. Without comprehending, there would be no progress. Without questioning, there would be no progress. So it's an interesting thing watching something 15 years later and getting scared from it because of the real world possibilities. Weird, wild, weird, wonky. What else? What's another good W word? Wumbo. I wumbo. You wumbo. He, she, we, they wumbo. Wumbo, wumbo, wumbo. Eagle Eye, 2008 action film. On to the next review. Mucho mahalo.